The iron shackles clinked against the frozen ground as the slave trader shoved the orc woman forward, and Quinlan Winters looked up from mending his fence to see her stumble and catch herself, green hands already raw beneath the metal cuffs. He set down his tools without a word, his breath misting in the late autumn air as he crossed the frost-hardened earth of his homestead toward the road, where the merchant waited with his cargo of misery. "Fine specimen here," the trader called out, his voice carrying that oily cheerfulness that made Quinlan's jaw tighten. "Strong back, good teeth. Only 20 silver, seeing as how she's got that orc look about her. Most folks won't take them, but I figured a man alone on the frontier might need the help." Quinlan stopped a few paces away, his eyes not on the trader but on the woman. She stood taller than most men he knew, her shoulders broad beneath the thin, tattered dress that offered little protection against the cold. Her skin was the deep green of summer leaves, marked with scars both old and fresh. Small tusks curved up from her lower jaw, and her dark hair hung in matted tangles past her shoulders. But it was her eyes that caught him, amber, bright with defiance even as her body swayed slightly from exhaustion or hunger or both. "Not interested in slaves," Quinlan said, his voice flat. The trader's smile never wavered. "Indenture, then. 7 years of service, all legal and proper. I have the papers right here. Still not interested." 10 silver. Quinlan shook his head and turned to go back to his fence, but something made him pause. A sound, barely audible, the chattering of teeth. He looked back and saw the woman's jaw clenched tight, trying to still the shivering that ran through her frame. 5 silver, the trader said, desperation creeping into his voice now. "Look, I need to be in Milford by nightfall, and I cannot be dragging her along. She has been nothing but trouble since I bought her contract in Redstone. 5 silver and she is yours, or I leave her on the road and let the wolves have her." Quinlan studied the woman again. Her amber eyes met his, and he saw no pleading there, no begging. Just a cold assessment, as if she were already calculating her chances of survival if left to the wilderness. Something in that look reminded him of himself, years ago when he had returned from the border wars to find his family's farm burned and his parents dead. That same hardness, that same refusal to ask for mercy. 5 silver, he heard himself say, "but I want those chains off her first." The trader hesitated. "Now, I do not know if that is wise before the exchange. Chains first," Quinlan repeated, his hand moving to the sword he still wore despite his years of farming. Old habits from his soldiering days died hard, or no deal. Money won out over caution, as it usually did with such men. The trader fumbled for his keys, unlocking the shackles at her wrists first, then kneeling to work on the ones at her ankles. The moment the iron fell away, the orc woman stood straighter, rubbing her wrists where the metal had bitten deep enough to draw blood. Quinlan counted out 5 silver coins from his purse, already regretting the expense. Winter was coming, and he had planned to use that silver for supplies. But he could not unsee her standing there, shivering in the cold, about to be abandoned to the forest and its predators. The trader snatched the coins, shoved a rolled parchment into Quinlan's hands, and climbed onto his wagon with unseemly haste. Within moments, he had whipped his horses into a trot and disappeared down the road, leaving Quinlan alone with the orc woman and a contract he had not even read. They stood in silence for a long moment, the wind picking up and carrying the scent of coming snow. Quinlan noticed her fists were clenched, her stance balanced despite her obvious weakness. Ready to fight or run even now. "What is your name?" he asked. She blinked as if the question surprised her. When she spoke, her voice was rough, like she had not used it much recently. "Nara." "Nara," he repeated, nodding. I am Quinlan Winters. This is my farm." He gestured to the modest homestead behind him, a sturdy cabin, a barn, a chicken coop, fields lying fallow for winter. "You look like you need food and a warm place to sleep. We can talk about the rest later." Suspicion flickered across her face. "Why?" "Because it is cold and you are hungry, and those are problems with simple solutions." He turned and started walking back toward the cabin, not looking to see if she followed. "You can come inside or not. Your choice." He heard her footsteps after a moment, uneven and careful, maintaining distance between them. Smart, he thought. Trust was earned, not given, especially for someone who had been in chains. The cabin was warm, heat radiating from the stone fireplace where he had left the morning fire banked with embers. Quinlan stirred it back to life, adding fresh wood, then moved to the cupboard where he kept his supplies. Bread, cheese, dried meat, apples from his small orchard. He set them on the table, then ladled water from the barrel into his kettle and hung it over the fire to heat. Nara stood just inside the doorway, her eyes tracking his every movement. She had positioned herself so she could see both the door and the room's interior, her back to the wall. "More soldier than slave," he noted. "Interesting." "Sit," he said, pulling out one of the two chairs at his table. "Eat." She did not move immediately, studying the food as if it might be a trap. Quinlan sighed, tore off a piece of bread, and ate it himself. Not poison, just food. Only then did she approach, moving with a predator's grace despite her exhaustion. She sat on the very edge of the chair, ready to bolt, and picked up a piece of bread. She ate slowly at first, then faster, hunger overwhelming caution. Quinlan busied himself preparing tea, giving her space and time. When the kettle boiled, he poured 2 cups and set one in front of her. She wrapped her hands around it, soaking in the warmth, and for the first time he saw her shoulders drop slightly, tension easing just a fraction. "The trader said you were trouble in Redstone," Quinlan said conversationally, settling into the other chair with his own tea. "What kind of trouble?" Nara's eyes lifted to meet his, that amber gaze sharp. "I broke a man's arm." "Why?" "He thought buying my contract meant he could touch me however he pleased." Her voice held no regret, no apology. "I explained otherwise." Quinlan took a sip of his tea. "Good." She blinked again, that same surprised expression. "Good." Any man who thinks he can force himself on a woman deserves worse than a broken arm. He set down his cup. "That is not how things work here. You will sleep in the barn until we can set up something better. It is warm enough with the animals and dry. I will bring you blankets and a proper coat. In the morning, we will talk about what comes next." "The contract," Nara said, her voice careful. "You own my service for 7 years. I own a piece of paper I have not even read yet." Quinlan stood, moving to the chest in the corner where he kept his old military gear. He pulled out a thick wool blanket, a second one, then found an old coat that had belonged to his father. It would be too small for her broad shoulders, but better than nothing. "Tomorrow we will figure out if you want to stay and under what terms. Tonight, you just need to rest." He handed her the blankets and coat, then opened the door to lead her to the barn. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Nara followed him across the yard to the barn, where his 2 cows, 3 goats, and a mule regarded them with placid curiosity. "Hay loft is warmest," Quinlan said, pointing to the ladder. "Animals give off heat that rises. There is fresh hay up there, and I will bring you more food in the morning." Nara climbed the ladder with ease despite her exhaustion, the blankets and coat bundled under one arm. At the top, she turned to look down at him, her expression unreadable in the gathering dark. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Quinlan considered the question. "Because someone did something similar for me once when I needed it, and because no one should sleep in chains." He left before she could respond, walking back through the cold evening air to his cabin. Inside, he finally unrolled the parchment the trader had given him. It was indeed an indenture contract, legal and binding under the king's law, granting him 7 years of service from one Nara of the Stonefist clan, in exchange for food, shelter, and a single silver coin at the end of her term. The contract had been signed with an X, which likely meant she could not read or write. Quinlan fed the contract to the fire and watched it burn. Sleep came fitfully that night. He kept thinking of the amber eyes filled with defiance, the careful way she had assessed every threat, the scars on her green skin that spoke of a hard life made harder. When dawn broke, he rose and prepared breakfast porridge with honey, more bread, dried fruit. He made enough for 2 and carried half out to the barn. Nara was already awake, sitting in the hay with the blankets wrapped around her shoulders. She had braided her hair, or attempted to, though without a comb it remained unruly. The coat lay folded beside her. "Does not fit," she said, noticing his glance at it, "but thank you for the thought. I will see about getting you one that does." He held up the bowl. "Breakfast." She accepted it, and this time she did not hesitate before eating. Quinlan sat on a hay bale, eating his own portion in companionable silence. Outside he could hear the wind picking up, and the smell of snow was stronger now. "Storm is coming," he observed. "Probably hit by midday. I need to finish securing the fence line and make sure the animals have enough feed. After that, we should talk." Nara nodded, scraping the last of the porridge from her bowl. "I can help with the fence. I am strong," she interrupted. "I can work." "That is why you bought my contract, is it not?" "For labor," Quinlan shook his head. "I bought your contract because I could not stand to see you left on the road to die. But if you want to help, I would not refuse it. The work will go faster with 2. They worked through the morning as the clouds gathered overhead, dark and heavy with coming snow. Nara proved her words true. She was incredibly strong, able to lift fence posts he would have struggled with, driving them into the hard ground with powerful strikes of the hammer. She worked with the efficiency of someone who had done hard labor before. No wasted movements, no complaints. The first snowflakes began to fall as they secured the last post. Quinlan looked up at the sky, then at Nara, who was watching the snow with an expression he could not quite read. "Have you seen snow before?" he asked. "Once, when I was a child, before my clan moved to the southern territories." She held out one green hand, letting the flakes settle on her palm. "I had forgotten how quiet it makes everything." They walked back to the cabin as the snow began to fall in earnest, thick white flakes that would soon blanket the world. Inside, Quinlan built up the fire while Nara stood near the doorway, still maintaining that careful distance. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair. "We should talk about your situation." She sat, her posture straight and wary. "The contract." "I burned the contract last night." Silence. Then slowly, "You what?" "Burned it. In that fireplace right there." Quinlan leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "I do not believe in owning people, Nara. Not their service, not their time, not their lives. You are free to go whenever you want." She stared at him like he had grown a second head. "I do not understand." "Which part?" "Any of it. All of it." She stood abruptly, her hands clenched into fists. "You spend silver on me, you break my chains, you give me food and shelter, and now you say I am free. What is the trick? What do you want from me?" "No trick," Quinlan said calmly, "and what I want is for you to make your own choice. You can leave right now, walk out that door, and I would not stop you. I would give you food and supplies for the road and wish you well. Or you can stay. Work the farm with me, share the food and the firewood, and when spring comes we can reassess. I would pay you a wage, same as I would pay any hired hand. You would be free to leave whenever you wanted." Nara sank back into the chair, her expression shifting through confusion, suspicion, and something that might have been hope before hardening again into caution. Why would you do this? Quinlan moved to the window, watching the snow fall. Do you know anything about the border wars, Nara? I know humans and orcs fought. My clan lost many warriors. I fought in those wars. Spent 3 years on the frontier, watching friends die, killing people who were no different from me except for the flag they served under. He turned to face her. When I came home, I found my parents dead, killed by raiders during the chaos. Could have been human raiders, could have been orcs. Does not matter really, they are just as dead either way. You should hate orcs then. I should, he agreed. And I did for a while, hated everyone and everything, but hate is exhausting, Nara. It eats you from the inside. A friend of mine, another veteran, he took me in when I was at my lowest. Did not ask for anything, just gave me a place to stay and food to eat until I could stand on my own again. He told me that the only way to stop the cycle of hate was to choose something different. So I am your act of choosing differently. There was an edge to her voice now. Your way of feeling better about the past, maybe partly, Quinlan admitted. But also because I need the help and you need a place to stay, and we can either approach this as two people trying to survive, or we can let the past define us. Your choice. Nara was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. When she spoke, her voice was softer. The Stonefist clan cast me out 2 years ago. I was too friendly with humans, too willing to trade instead of raid. They said I had forgotten what it meant to be orc. I have been working wherever I could, taking whatever jobs I could find, until a man in Redstone accused me of theft and I was arrested. The magistrate sold my contract to cover the supposed debt. Did you steal? No. But who believes an orc over a human merchant? She looked up at him. If I stay, people in the nearest town will know you have an orc working your farm. They will talk. Some will refuse to trade with you. Let them talk, Quinlan said. I do not have much use for the opinions of people who judge based on skin color or the shape of someone's teeth. A ghost of a smile crossed Nara's face, there and gone in an instant. You are a strange man, Quinlan Winters, so I have been told. I will stay, she said. For now, through the winter at least. If you change your mind about this arrangement, tell me and I will leave. Same goes for you. Quinlan extended his hand. Partners then. We work the farm together, split the proceeds from any crops or sales, and you are free to go whenever you want. Agreed. She looked at his hand for a moment before reaching out and clasping it. Her grip was strong, her palm calloused from hard work. Agreed. The snow fell for 3 days straight, transforming the world into a pristine white landscape. Quinlan and Nara fell into a routine during those days, tending the animals together, cooking meals, maintaining the cabin and barn. She slept in the loft, though Quinlan offered her the cabin's second room. Not yet, she had said, and he did not push. They talked while they worked, small conversations that slowly built into something larger. He learned that she had been a scout for her clan before her exile, that she could track game through any terrain and read weather in the sky. She learned that he had been a sergeant in the king's army, that he had learned farming from his parents before the war, that he still sometimes woke from nightmares about battles long past. On the 4th day, the snow stopped, and the sun emerged, bright and blinding against the white landscape. Quinlan took his bow and a quiver of arrows from the cabin. Thought I would check my trap lines, maybe hunt if I see fresh sign, he said. Want to come? Nara's eyes lit up in a way he had not seen before. Yes. She moved through the snow-covered forest like a shadow, silent and sure-footed despite the drifts. Quinlan, who had considered himself a decent woodsman, found himself struggling to keep up. She pointed out tracks he would have missed: deer, rabbit, even a fox, and showed him places where animals had bedded down during the storm. At one of his snares, they found a rabbit frozen and dead, useless now. Nara examined it, then the snare itself. "The placement is good, but the trigger is too sensitive," she said. "Small animals will set it off accidentally, wasting it. Here, let me show you." She reset the snare with quick, efficient movements, adjusting the trigger mechanism in a way that made immediate sense once Quinlan saw it. They moved to the next one, and she made similar adjustments, explaining her reasoning as she worked. "Who taught you this?" Quinlan asked. "My father. He was the best trapper in our clan." A shadow crossed her face. "He died in the border wars, took an arrow meant for his war chief." "I am sorry." "It was a long time ago." She stood, brushing snow from her hands. "There, fresh tracks. Deer moved through here this morning. 3 of them, one larger, probably a buck." They followed the tracks for an hour, moving slowly and carefully. When they finally spotted the deer, 2 does, and a young buck, it was Nara who signaled for Quinlan to take the shot. His arrow flew true, and the buck dropped cleanly. Together they field-dressed the animal and hauled it back to the cabin. It was hard, heavy work, but Nara carried her share without complaint. By the time they arrived home, the sun was setting, and Quinlan's respect for his new partner had grown considerably. That night, he insisted she come inside to help with the butchering. It was too cold to work in the barn, he argued, and they would be working long into the night to process the meat before it spoiled. Nara agreed, though he noticed she positioned herself where she could always see the door. They worked by firelight and candlelight, cutting meat into strips for drying, setting aside the best cuts for roasting, boiling bones for stock. It was messy, bloody work, and somewhere in the middle of it, Nara laughed. It was a rusty sound, as if she had not used it in a while, but it transformed her face. Quinlan found himself smiling in response. "What is funny?" he asked. "I was just thinking, this is the most peaceful I have felt in years, covered in deer blood in a human's cabin in the middle of winter." She shook her head. "My clan would be horrified." "My mother would probably be horrified too," Quinlan admitted. "She always said butchering was men's work and I should leave it to my father." "That is foolish. Why would you separate work by gender?" "Everyone should know how to process their own food." "You would have liked my mother," Quinlan said. "She said the same thing right before she went back to cutting up the pig." They finished well past midnight. The cabin now hung with strips of venison drying near the fire, choice cuts stored in the cold room beneath the floorboards. Quinlan walked Nara to the barn, carrying a lantern to light the way through the darkness. "Thank you for today," he said. "The hunting, the trapping advice, I learned a lot." Nara paused at the barn door. "You are a good shot with the bow and patient. Those are gifts not everyone has. You are an excellent tracker, best I have seen. My father would be pleased to hear that." She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Good night, Quinlan." "Good night, Nara." Winter deepened, and their partnership strengthened. They worked together seamlessly now, each learning the other's rhythms and preferences. Quinlan taught Nara to read and write in the evenings, using his mother's old primer and charcoal on flat pieces of wood. She proved a quick study, frustrated by mistakes, but determined to master each lesson. In return, she taught him advanced tracking techniques, how to predict animal movement, how to move silently through the forest. She showed him which plants could be harvested even in winter, which bark could be brewed for medicine, which roots were edible if prepared correctly. The nearest town, Milford, was a 2-hour walk through the snow. Quinlan went once a month for supplies, and the first time he invited Nara along, she refused. "They will not want me there," she said. "Probably not," Quinlan agreed. "But I would like the company, and the walk is easier with someone to help carry things back. She came, though her posture was tense as they entered the small trading post. The shopkeeper, a grizzled man named Thomas, stared openly at Nara before turning his attention to Quinlan. "That is an orc," Thomas said, as if Quinlan might not have noticed. "Her name is Nara, and she is my business partner. We need flour, salt, sugar, and seeds for spring planting. Do you have what we need, or should we try the next town over?" Money won out over prejudice, as it usually did. Thomas filled their order, though he put the coins Nara handed him directly into his cash box without touching her hand. Several other townspeople whispered and stared as Quinlan and Nara walked through Milford, but no one confronted them directly. On the way home, Nara was quiet until they were well out of town. "Does it bother you?" she asked. "The way they look at you now because of me?" "Let me ask you something," Quinlan replied. "Does it bother you that I am human?" "Of course not." "Then why would it bother me that you are an orc?" He shifted the heavy sack of flour on his shoulder. "People are going to think what they want to think, Nara. I cannot control that. I can only control how I act and who I choose to trust. I choose to trust you." She was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "I choose to trust you too." Something shifted between them after that day, a deepening of the bond they had been building. Nara began spending more evenings in the cabin, working on her reading and writing at the table while Quinlan mended tools or carved new handles for implements. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they sat in comfortable silence, but the space felt warmer with both of them in it. One evening in late winter, a pack of wolves came sniffing around the livestock. Quinlan grabbed his bow, but Nara stopped him. "Wait," she said, then stepped outside and made a sound he had never heard before, a deep, resonant call that seemed to vibrate through the air. The wolves stopped circling, their ears pricking forward. Nara made the sound again, then added a series of shorter barks and growls. The wolves retreated into the forest, and Nara came back inside, brushing snow from her shoulders. "What was that?" Quinlan asked, amazed. "Wolf speech, sort of. It is not a real language, but certain sounds have meaning to them. I told them this was our territory and we would defend it. And they just accepted that. Wolves are practical. They know orcs are strong and dangerous. They will find easier prey elsewhere." She sat down at the table, picking up the charcoal stick she had been using to practice her letters. "Though we should check the fence line tomorrow, make sure there are no weak points." "We can do that." Quinlan put another log on the fire. "Nara, can I ask you something personal?" She looked up from her writing. "You can ask. Do you miss your clan? Despite what they did, do you miss having that community?" Her hand stilled on the wood. "Every day. Being orc is not just about blood or tusks or green skin. It is about belonging to something larger than yourself, knowing your place in the world, having people who understand you without words." She set down the charcoal. "But I cannot go back. Even if they would have me, I could not pretend to hate humans just because our peoples have been at war. I have met too many good humans, seen too much kindness. It would be a lie to live that way. That must be lonely." "It was," Nara said, meeting his eyes, "until I came here." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning neither of them was quite ready to name. Quinlan felt his heart beat faster, saw the way Nara's breathing had changed, and knew that whatever was growing between them had just shifted again, into something that was no longer just friendship or partnership. "I am glad you are here," he said quietly. "So am I." The moment stretched, fragile and precious, until Nara cleared her throat and returned to her writing practice. Quinlan went back to his carving, but his hands were unsteady, and his mind was full of amber eyes and slow smiles. Spring came late that year, but when it finally arrived, it was glorious. The snow melted to reveal the brown earth, and soon green shoots began pushing up through the soil. Quinlan and Nara worked from dawn to dusk, plowing fields, planting seeds, repairing winter damage to the buildings and fences. Nara had moved into the cabin's second room by then, a natural progression that neither of them had discussed much. She simply started bringing her things over, a few items at a time, until her blankets were on that bed and her few possessions were stored in that room. The cabin felt more complete with both of them living in it. They fell into new rhythms with the changing season. Morning chores together, then splitting up Quinlan to tend the fields while Nara checked traps and hunted. Midday meal together, more work in the afternoon, evening meal by the fire. Some nights she practiced reading from the handful of books Quinlan owned. Some nights they just talked, sharing stories from their different lives. It was on one of those evenings, with the windows open to let in the warm spring air, that someone knocked on the door. Quinlan and Nara exchanged glances. Visitors were rare out here. He rose and opened the door to find a young woman, barely 20, with dark hair and a desperate look in her eyes. "Please," she said, breathing hard like she had been running. "Please, you have to help me. They are coming." "Who is coming?" Quinlan asked, but then he heard the sound of horses moving fast. "My father's men. He wants to force me to marry Lord Ashford, but I will not do it. I ran, and they have been chasing me for 2 days. The girl looked over her shoulder, terror plain on her face. "Please, I have nowhere else to go." Nara appeared at Quinlan's shoulder. "How many men?" 4, maybe 5. "Quinlan?" Nara's voice was calm, but he heard the question in it. He made his decision in a heartbeat. "Come inside, quickly." The girl stumbled through the door and Quinlan shut it behind her. "Nara, take her to your room. Stay there, both of you." "I can fight," Nara said. "I know, but I need you to protect her if any of them get past me." He went to the chest where he kept his old military gear and pulled out his sword, the blade still sharp and well-maintained despite years of peace. "Please, Nara, I need to know you are safe." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Come on," she said to the girl, leading her to the back room. Quinlan stepped outside just as 5 riders thundered into his yard. They pulled up short when they saw him standing on his porch, armed and ready. "Where is she?" the lead rider demanded. He was a large man, well-fed and richly dressed, with the look of minor nobility about him. "You are on my property," Quinlan said calmly. "State your business properly or leave." "My business is retrieving my wayward daughter. She came this way, we saw her tracks. Hand her over." "I have not seen any girl," Quinlan lied smoothly. "And I do not take kindly to armed men riding onto my land making demands." "I am Lord Ashford," the man blustered. "You will surrender her immediately or face consequences." "I fought in the border wars, Lord Ashford." "I have faced consequences that would make you wet yourself. Now, you are going to turn those horses around and leave my property, or we are going to have a problem." One of the other riders, a younger man with a cruel face, laughed. "1 farmer against 5 of us. I like those odds." "Who said I was alone?" Quinlan asked, and as if on cue, Nara stepped out of the cabin, a hunting bow in her hands and an arrow already nocked. The horses shied at the sight of her and the men cursed. "An orc," one of them shouted. "My partner," Quinlan corrected. "And she is a better shot than me, which is saying something. Now, are you going to leave peacefully, or do we need to demonstrate why that would be the smart choice?" Lord Ashford's face turned red with rage. "You dare threaten me? I will return with the magistrate and have you both arrested for harboring a fugitive." "Your daughter is not a fugitive. She is a free woman who has chosen not to marry you. That is her right under the king's law." Quinlan raised his sword slightly. "But by all means, go fetch the magistrate. I would love to explain to him how you trespassed on private property with armed men making threats. I am sure that will go well for you." The standoff lasted another tense moment before Lord Ashford jerked his horse's reins. "This is not over, farmer." "Actually, it is," Quinlan replied. "Leave now." The men rode off, but not before the cruel-faced one spat in their direction. Quinlan did not lower his sword until they were out of sight, and even then he kept listening for the sound of returning horses. Nara came to stand beside him. That was dangerous. So is most of life. He finally sheathed the sword. "We should check on the girl." They found her sitting on Nara's bed, crying quietly. She looked up when they entered, wiping at her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." "What is your name?" Nara asked gently. Diana Ashford." She laughed bitterly. "Though I suppose I should not use that name anymore, should I?" Over the next hour they coaxed the full story from her. Her father had arranged her marriage to Lord Ashford, a man 30 years her senior with a reputation for cruelty. Diana had refused, been locked in her room, and finally escaped through a window. She had been running ever since, with no plan beyond getting as far away as possible. "You can stay here tonight," Quinlan said. "Tomorrow we will figure out next steps." "I have nowhere to go," Diana said hopelessly. "My mother is dead, I have no other family, and my father will hunt me down anywhere I try to hide." "There are places," Nara said thoughtfully. "Communities that do not care about noble marriage contracts, some of the frontier settlements or the free cities in the south. We can help you get to one of them safely." "Why would you help me? You do not even know me." Quinlan and Nara exchanged glances, and he saw his own thoughts reflected in her eyes. "Because someone helped me. Because it is the right thing to do. Because no one should be forced into a life they do not want." "Because we can," Quinlan said simply. Diana stayed with them for 3 days while they prepared supplies and planned a route to get her safely to the free city of Rivermouth, where she could disappear and start a new life. On the morning of the 4th day, Quinlan and Nara prepared to escort her there personally. It was a 5-day journey on foot, but they could not risk the roads where her father's men might spot them. They traveled through the forests and hills, avoiding settlements where possible. Nara proved invaluable, finding paths Quinlan would have missed, keeping them hidden when they heard other travelers nearby. Diana struggled with the pace at first, but grew stronger as the days passed, her fear gradually replaced by determination. Around the campfire at night, the 3 of them talked. Diana was curious about Nara, asking questions that others might have considered rude, but that came from genuine interest rather than prejudice. Nara answered honestly, speaking about Orc culture, her exile, her life before meeting Quinlan. "You two are in love," Diana observed on the 3rd night, saying it so matter-of-factly that both Quinlan and Nara froze. "What makes you say that?" Quinlan asked carefully. "The way you look at each other when you think the other is not watching. The way you move together, always aware of where the other is. The way you speak without words sometimes." Diana smiled. "My mother loved my father that way before she died. I remember what it looked like." After Diana went to sleep, Quinlan and Nara sat in silence, feeding the fire, not quite looking at each other. "Is she right?" Nara finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Quinlan considered lying or deflecting or making a joke. Instead, he said, "Yes." Nara's breath caught. "Since when?" "I do not know. It happened so gradually I did not realize it until it was already true. Maybe when you first smiled at me. Maybe when we butchered that deer together. Maybe the first moment I saw you standing in chains but unbroken." He finally turned to look at her. "I love you, Nara. I know that is complicated, I know people will judge us for it, I know we come from different worlds, but it is true anyway." "It is true for me too," she said, and there were tears in her amber eyes. "I tried not to." I told myself it was just gratitude or friendship or partnership, but it is more than that, so much more. What do we do about it? Nara laughed, the sound watery but genuine. I have no idea. I have never been in love before. Neither have I, Quinlan admitted. Not like this. They sat in silence for a while longer, processing the enormity of what they had just acknowledged. Finally, Nara reached across the space between them and took his hand. Her palm was warm, her grip strong, and Quinlan felt something settle in his chest, a rightness he had not known he was missing. "We will figure it out," she said. "Together," he agreed. They reached Rivermouth 5 days later, tired and dusty but successful. The free city lived up to its reputation. Humans, orcs, elves, and other races mingled freely in the streets, united by trade and mutual benefit rather than old hatreds. Deanna stared in wonder at a world where an orc merchant haggled cheerfully with a human customer, where mixed-race couples walked openly hand in hand. They found her lodging at a respectable boarding house, run by a stern older woman who asked no questions when Deanna paid for a month in advance with coins Quinlan had insisted she take. They helped her get settled, made sure she knew where to find work and how to stay safe, and then it was time to say goodbye. "Thank you," Deanna said, hugging them both fiercely. "You saved my life, both of you." "You saved your own life," Nara corrected. "You had the courage to run. We just helped you get where you were going." "Be safe," Quinlan added, "and be happy. That is the best revenge against people like your father and Lord Ashford." They left the city at dawn the next day, beginning the long walk home. But this time, as they walked, Quinlan reached for Nara's hand, and she laced her fingers through his. They walked that way for hours, not talking, just being together. That night, camped under the stars, Nara asked, "What happens when we get home?" "What do you mean?" "Here in Rivermouth, no one cared that we are different species. But back home in Milford at the farm, people will talk. They might do worse than talk." Quinlan pulled her closer, and she settled against his side, her head on his shoulder. "Let them talk. I do not care what they think. The only opinions that matter are yours and mine." "I am afraid," Nara admitted. "Not of them, but of losing this, losing you. You will not lose me. I am not going anywhere." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "I love you, Nara. That is not going to change because some small-minded people disapprove." "I love you too," she whispered. "More than I thought possible." They made love for the first time that night, tender and awkward and perfect. Later, wrapped in their blankets with the fire burning low, Nara traced the scars on Quinlan's chest while he ran his fingers through her dark hair. "I never thought I would have this," she said quietly. "A home, a partner, someone who looks at me and sees me, not just an orc or an exile or a thing to be used." "I see you," Quinlan promised. "All of you, and I love all of you. Even my tusks," she asked, a hint of teasing in her voice. "Especially your tusks." He kissed her to prove it, and she laughed against his mouth, joyful and free. They returned home to find the farm intact but the neighbors talking. Word had spread about them sheltering Deanna, about defying Lord Ashford, about the human farmer and his orc partner. Some of the talk was merely curious, but some of it was ugly. Thomas, the shopkeeper in Milford, refused to serve them on their next supply run. "I cannot have orcs in my shop," he said flatly. "Bad for business." "Then we will take our business elsewhere," Quinlan replied calmly, and they walked out. They found a smaller trading post in the next town over, run by a weathered woman who looked at Nara, looked at Quinlan, and said, "Coin spends the same no matter who carries it. What do you need?" Not everyone was hostile. A few neighbors, veterans who remembered the complexity of war, stopped by to offer quiet support. A farmer whose daughter Quinlan had once helped when her ox went lame brought them a basket of early vegetables. small kindnesses that mattered more than grand gestures. But there were also rocks thrown at their cabin in the night, slurs shouted from the road, a dead rat left on their doorstep. Nara wanted to confront the harassers, but Quinlan counseled patience. Violence will only confirm what they already believe about orcs, he said. We show them they are wrong by living well, by being good neighbors despite their hatred, by refusing to become what they fear. That is hard, Nara said. I know, but it is the only way this works. Summer came in full and their crops grew tall and green. They worked side by side in the fields, and in the evenings they sat on the porch together, watching the sun set. Nara had never been happier, and Quinlan could see it in the way she moved, the way she smiled, the way she looked at the farm with pride and ownership. One evening in late summer, a group of 5 orcs appeared at the edge of their property. Nara saw them first, and Quinlan felt her entire body go rigid with tension. Stay calm, he murmured. Let us see what they want. The orcs approached slowly, making no aggressive moves. The leader, a massive male with scars covering his green skin and tusks as long as Quinlan's fingers, stopped a respectful distance away. Nara of the Stonefist clan, he said, his voice deep and formal. I am Grath, war leader of the Black Mountain clan. We have heard stories of you. An orc living with a human, defending human children, working human land. We came to see if the stories were true. They are true, Nara said, lifting her chin. This is Quinlan Winters. He is my partner and my heartmate. This is our farm. Grath studied them both for a long moment. Your clan cast you out for being too human. Mine cast me out for refusing to raid human settlements that had done us no harm. We are forming a new clan, Nara. One that believes orcs and humans can coexist peacefully. One that chooses trade over war, cooperation over hatred. Where? Nara asked, hope and caution warring in her voice. In the northern hills, 3 days' journey from here. We have 50 orcs now and a few humans who have joined us. We are building something new. He paused. We would welcome you if you wish to come, both of you. Quinlan felt Nara trembling beside him. He took her hand, squeezed it gently. Can we think about it? Nara asked. Of course. We will be here until morning. If you decide to join us, we would be honored. If not, know that you have kin who understand what you are trying to do. Grath nodded to them both. Peace between our peoples starts with individuals like you. Never forget that. The orcs withdrew to make camp near the tree line, leaving Quinlan and Nara standing in their yard as the sun set. What do you want to do? Quinlan asked. Nara was quiet for a long time. Part of me wants to go, to be part of a clan again, to have that community I have been missing, to be around others who understand both sides of me. But this is our home. We built this together. Our crops are in the ground, our animals know us, our life is here. She turned to face him fully. And I do not want to leave what we have created. We could create it there too, Quinlan said gently. A new start with people who would accept us from the beginning. No more rocks through windows, no more slurs, no more fighting to be seen as equals. You would leave this farm. Everything you have built, Nara, you are everything I have built that matters. He cupped her face in his hands. This farm is wood and stone and earth. Important, yes, but replaceable. You are not. If going north means you can have both me and a community, then we should go. Tears spilled down her green cheeks. I do not deserve you. Yes, you do, and I do not deserve you, but here we are anyway. He kissed her softly. So what do we do? Nara was silent for a long moment, then said, We go talk to them, learn more about what they are building, and then we decide together. They spent the evening with Grath and his orcs, learning about the new clan. It was truly a blend: orcs who had been exiled or left their clans, humans who had fought in the wars and been disillusioned by the endless hatred, even a few half-orcs seeking a place where their mixed heritage was not a curse. They had built a settlement in the hills, were planting crops, establishing trade routes with the few human towns willing to deal with them. "It is hard," Grath admitted. "Many humans still see us as monsters. Many orcs see us as traitors. But we are building something that matters. A future where our children do not have to choose between their heritage and their hearts." Quinlan and Nara talked late into the night after the others had gone to sleep. They weighed the farm against community, familiar land against new possibilities, comfort against potential. "What does your gut tell you?" Quinlan finally asked. Nara took a deep breath. "My gut tells me that we can make a bigger difference with others than we can alone, that what Grath is building is important and rare and worth being part of. That you and we are proof that this can work, and maybe we can help others believe it too." "Then we go," Quinlan said simply. "Just like that, just like that. We sell the farm or leave it to someone who needs it. We pack what matters and we go build something new, together." Nara kissed him, fierce and grateful and full of love. Together. In the morning they told Grath their decision. The war leader's face split into a wide grin, his tusks gleaming in the early light. "Welcome to the Freewind clan," he said. "That is what we call ourselves. Free of the old hatreds, free to choose our own path." It took 2 weeks to prepare. They harvested what crops were ready, stored, or sold them. Quinlan arranged to sell the farm to a young couple from Milford who had always been kind to them, letting them have it for far less than it was worth. They packed their essential belongings, said goodbye to the neighbors who had become friends, and left behind the life they had known. The journey north was strange and bittersweet. Quinlan looked back only once at the cabin that had been his refuge and his home, where he had met Nara and fallen in love, where they had built their first life together. "Regrets?" Nara asked softly. "Memories," he corrected. "Good ones. But our future is ahead of us, not behind." The Freewind settlement was larger than Quinlan had expected, a cluster of sturdy buildings nestled in a valley between forested hills. Orcs and humans worked side by side, children of both races playing together under the watchful eyes of their parents. It was chaotic and imperfect and full of growing pains, but it was also full of hope. They were given a plot of land to build on, and Quinlan and Nara threw themselves into constructing their new home. Others helped. Grath himself lent his considerable strength to raising the main beams. A human carpenter named Marcus taught them techniques Quinlan had never seen. Orc women showed Nara how to weave protective wards into the thatching. The cabin they built was larger than their old one, with room to grow. "For when we have children," Nara said one evening, and Quinlan's heart swelled at the casual way she said it, the assumption of a shared future. "Children," he repeated, trying the word on for size. "Half-orc children." "Is that all right?" Nara asked, suddenly uncertain. "More than all right, it is perfect." He pulled her close. "I want everything with you, Nara. Children, a home, a life. All of it." Their first winter in the Freewind settlement was hard but joyful. Food was sometimes scarce but always shared. The wind cut cold through the valley, but their cabin was warm and their neighbors were close. Quinlan taught tracking and hunting skills to humans who had never learned, while Nara worked with the scouts, helping establish safe routes through the hills. They made friends. Marcus the carpenter and his orc wife, Zara, became close companions, sharing meals and stories and laughter. There were challenges too, old prejudices flaring up, arguments about how to blend orc and human customs, disagreements about trade and security. But Grath led with wisdom and fairness, and slowly, painfully, they learned to be one people instead of two. Spring came again, and with it, new growth. The crops they planted in the valley flourished. Trade agreements were established with 3 human towns and 2 orc clans, all willing to deal with the Freewind settlement as a neutral party. And one morning in early summer, Nara woke Quinlan with news that changed everything. "I am with child," she said, her hand resting on her still flat belly, her amber eyes bright with tears and joy and fear. Quinlan sat up, his heart pounding. "Are you certain?" The healer confirmed it yesterday. "I wanted to be sure before I told you." She searched his face. "Are you happy?" He answered by pulling her into his arms, holding her tight, letting his own tears fall into her hair. "Happy does not begin to cover it. I am terrified and amazed and more grateful than I can say. The pregnancy was not easy." Nara suffered through bouts of sickness, her body struggling with the challenge of carrying a half-human child. But she was strong, and the settlement's healers were experienced with such pregnancies. Quinlan hovered like an anxious shadow, earning teasing from their friends but unable to help himself. "I am an orc warrior," Nara reminded him when he tried to forbid her from lifting anything heavier than a teacup. "I am not made of glass." "You are made of stubbornness," he countered, but he backed off, trusting her to know her own limits. The child was born in the depths of winter, during a snowstorm that blanketed the valley in white silence. Nara labored for hours, Quinlan at her side the entire time, holding her hand and whispering encouragement. When their daughter finally emerged, squalling and furious, the healer laughed with relief. "Healthy," she announced. 10 fingers, 10 toes, strong lungs." Quinlan looked at his daughter and felt his entire world shift. She had Nara's green skin, lighter than her mother's but unmistakably orcish. His dark hair in a soft fuzz on her head. Small tusks already visible in her tiny mouth. Eyes that might be amber or brown or something in between, still too new to tell. "She is perfect," he whispered. "She is ours," Nara said, exhausted but radiant. "What should we name her?" They had discussed names endlessly over the months. Orc names, human names, names that bridged both cultures. In the end, they chose simply. "Mira," Quinlan said. "It means peaceful in the old tongue, and she is the peace we fought for made real." "Mira Winters," Nara agreed. "Our daughter." Mira grew quickly, a bright, curious child who walked early and talked constantly. She had her mother's strength and her father's patience, and she moved between the orc and human children of the settlement with equal ease. Watching her play, seeing her accepted and loved by everyone regardless of their race, Quinlan felt vindicated in every choice they had made, years past. The Freewind settlement grew from a desperate experiment to a thriving community. More exiles and seekers came, drawn by stories of a place where old hatreds did not matter. Quinlan and Nara built a good life there, farming their land, raising their daughter, and later, 2 more children, a son named Thorn and another daughter named Kara. On warm summer evenings, Quinlan and Nara would sit on their porch and watch their children play with the others, a riot of green skin and brown tusks and rounded teeth, pointed ears and human ones, all mixed together in joyful chaos. "You ever think about that first day?" Nara asked one such evening. "When I arrived at your gate in chains." "Sometimes," Quinlan admitted. "Usually when I am trying to fall asleep and my mind wanders. What do you think about? How easily it could have gone differently. If I had been in a different mood, if I had had less silver in my purse, if I had believed the trader when he said you were trouble." He took her hand, still amazed after all these years by how perfectly it fit in his. "How lucky I am that I chose to break those chains." "I am the lucky one," Nara countered. "You gave me everything. A home, a family, a community, a future. You gave me love when I had forgotten what that felt like." "We gave that to each other," Quinlan said. I was just as lost as you were, Nara. I was surviving, but I was not living. You changed that. You made me want to be better, do better, build something that mattered. Nara leaned her head on his shoulder, watching Mira help little Kara climb a tree while Thorn cheered them on from below. We built it together. Together, Quinlan agreed and kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her earth and herbs and home. As the sun set over the valley, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, their children's laughter echoed through the settlement. Orcs and humans worked side by side, preparing evening meals, tending animals, living lives that were proof that a different future was possible. And in that moment, with Nara's hand in his and their children safe and happy, Quinlan knew that breaking those chains had been the most important decision of his life. Not because it had saved Nara, though it had. Not because it had led to love, though it had done that too. But because it had been the first step on a journey that had changed everything, that had proven that prejudice and hatred were not inevitable, that people could choose differently. They had chosen love over fear, partnership over solitude, hope over despair. And in doing so, they had helped build a world where their children would never have to make the same impossible choices, where green skin and brown could fall in love without fear, where the word home meant somewhere you belonged regardless of what you were born as. The next morning brought rain, soft and steady, soaking into the earth and feeding the crops. Quinlan woke early as he always did and found Nara already awake, staring out the window at the gray sky. "Could not sleep?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Just thinking," she said, leaning back into his embrace. "Grath wants us to help establish another settlement further north. He thinks we could create a whole network of these communities, places where people can live without the old hatreds. What do you think?" "I think he is right. I think what we have built here proves it can work." She turned in his arms to face him. "But I also think our children are young and this is our home. I do not want to leave what we have built." "Then we stay," Quinlan said simply. "There are others who can help Grath. Our contribution is right here, raising our children to be the bridge between our peoples, showing by example that love is stronger than hate." Nara smiled, that slow smile that still made his heart skip after all these years. "When did you become so wise?" "I am not wise. I am just a man who knows what matters." He kissed her softly. "You matter. Our children matter. This life we have built together matters. Everything else is secondary." A crash from the children's room interrupted them, followed by Thorn's wail and Mira's exclamation of, "It was an accident." Quinlan and Nara broke apart, both sighing in that universal parent way. "I will handle it," Nara said. "You start breakfast." The day unfolded in the familiar rhythm of family life, feeding children, settling squabbles, working the land, preparing meals, countless small tasks that made up a life. In the afternoon, Quinlan took Mira and Thorn into the forest to check trap lines, teaching them the skills Nara had once taught him. "Why do we have to be quiet?" Thorn whispered loudly, making Mira roll her eyes in the way only an older sister could. "Because the animals will hear us and run away," Quinlan explained patiently. "We are guests in their home. We move respectfully. Like how we are supposed to be quiet when Mama is meditating," Mira asked. "Exactly like that." They found rabbit tracks, deer sign, and the paw prints of a large cat that made Quinlan decide to turn back earlier than planned. On the walk home, Mira peppered him with questions about everything from why the sky was blue to whether orcs and humans had always hated each other. "Not always," Quinlan said. "Hate is taught, not born, and it can be unlearned. Like you and Mama unlearned it, your mother and I never hated each other. We were lucky enough to meet as individuals, not as representatives of our races. We saw each other as people first." I am glad you did, Mira said seriously. Otherwise I would not be here. Neither would I, Thorn added, not wanting to be left out. Quinlan laughed and ruffled both their heads. And we are very glad you are both here. That evening, the whole settlement gathered for a community meal, a tradition they held once a month. Long tables were set up in the central square, and everyone contributed food orc dishes heavy with spices and meat, human dishes with bread and vegetables, new fusion recipes that combined both traditions. Children raced between the tables, shrieking with laughter, while adults ate and talked and argued and laughed. Quinlan sat with Nara, Marcus, and Zara, watching the chaos with contentment. Grath stood to make an announcement about the northern settlement, asking for volunteers to help establish it. Several hands went up, younger orcs and humans eager for adventure and purpose. We are getting old, Marcus observed, watching them. Remember when that was us. All passionate idealism and boundless energy. Speak for yourself, Zara said, her tusks gleaming as she grinned. I am still full of boundless energy. You took a nap this afternoon, Marcus pointed out. A boundlessly energetic nap. They all laughed, and Quinlan felt that deep sense of belonging he had found here. These people were his family now, chosen and forged through shared struggle and purpose. The Freewind settlement was not perfect. There were still arguments, still moments when old prejudices surfaced, still challenges to overcome. But it was real and it was theirs, and it was proof that change was possible. As the evening wound down and parents began collecting sleepy children, Nara leaned against Quinlan's shoulder. This is everything I never knew I wanted, she said softly. A community, a purpose, a family. You. Always you, Quinlan agreed, kissing her temple. From that first day to this one to every day forward. You. They walked home through the quiet settlement, Mira holding Quinlan's hand while Nara carried sleeping Thorn, with little Kara already asleep on Quinlan's shoulders. Their cabin glowed warm with lamplight, welcoming them home. After the children were tucked into bed, Quinlan and Nara sat by their own fire, comfortable in the silence that came with years of partnership. Outside, the rain had stopped, and stars were beginning to appear between the clouds. You think they will have an easier time than we did? Nara asked. Our children. I think they will have different challenges, Quinlan said honestly. Being half-orc means belonging to both worlds and neither. But they will have something we did not. They will grow up in a place where they are normal, where mixed families are common, where love between races is celebrated rather than condemned. That is a gift. We gave them that, Nara said wonderingly. By choosing each other, by choosing to build this life, we gave them a better world. We helped, Quinlan corrected. Grath gave them this world. Marcus and Zara and all the others who came here gave them this world. Every person who chose hope over hate contributed to this. But it started with choice, did it not? Nara pressed. With individual decisions to be different, to choose differently. Your choice to break my chains. My choice to stay. Our choice to love each other despite everything that said we should not. Yes, Quinlan agreed. It started with choice. And it continues with choice every day, choosing partnership over isolation, choosing understanding over ignorance, choosing love over fear. Nara shifted to look at him directly, her amber eyes serious in the firelight. I would choose you again, you know. Every time, in every possible world, I would choose you. Quinlan felt his throat tighten with emotion. I know, because I would choose you too. Breaking those chains was not kindness or mercy, Nara, it was recognition. I looked at you and saw myself someone trying to survive in a world that wanted them to be someone they were not. I saw your strength and your dignity and your refusal to break, and I thought, there is someone worth knowing. And now. Now I look at you and see my wife, my partner, the mother of my children, and my best friend. I see everything that matters." He pulled her close, tucking her head under his chin. "I see home." They sat that way for a long time, wrapped in each other and the quiet comfort of a love that had been tested and proven true. Outside, the Freewind settlement slept, its people dreaming of futures that were now possible because people like Quinlan and Nara had dared to believe in them. The years continued to pass, marked by seasons and harvests, by children growing and the settlement expanding. Mira became a skilled hunter and tracker like her mother, proud of her mixed heritage and fierce in defending others who faced prejudice. Thorne discovered a talent for negotiation and trade, helping establish relationships with communities near and far. Kara, the youngest, showed an early aptitude for healing, learning from the settlement's best physicians. Quinlan and Nara aged together, their hair graying, their bodies marked by the hard work of frontier life. But their love never dimmed. If anything, it deepened, becoming the bedrock on which not just their family but the entire settlement was built. Young couples, both mixed and same race, would come to them for advice, and Quinlan and Nara would share their story, how they met, how they learned to trust each other, how they built a life together against all odds. "The key," Nara would say, "is seeing each other as people first. Not as orc or human, not as representatives of our races, but as individuals with hopes and fears and dreams. And choosing each other every day," Quinlan would add. "Love is not just a feeling, it is a decision. A commitment to show up, to work through problems, to build something together." On their 20th anniversary of arriving at the Freewind settlement, the community threw them a celebration. Children they had helped raise were now adults with children of their own. The settlement had grown to nearly 300 people, with satellite communities in the surrounding regions. Trade was flourishing. Relations with both human towns and orc clans were mostly peaceful, and a whole generation was growing up who could not remember a time when seeing humans and orcs living together was strange. Grath, now elderly but still commanding respect, stood to make a speech. 20 years ago, Quinlan and Nara joined us. They were not the first to come, but they were the ones who showed us what we could become. Their love, their partnership, their family, these things proved that what we were trying to build was not just possible but sustainable. They are the heart of this community, and we honor them today. The celebration lasted well into the night, with music and dancing and enough food to feed an army. Quinlan danced with Nara under the stars, their children and grandchildren watching with smiles. "Can you believe it has been 20 years?" Nara asked, breathless from the dance. "Feels like both forever and no time at all," Quinlan replied, "but I would not change a single moment. Not even the hard parts, the prejudice, the struggles, the times we were not sure we would make it. Especially not those parts. They made us who we are. They taught us what we were capable of." He spun her gently, making her laugh. "Every moment led us here, to this life, to this family, to this community. How could I regret any of it?" As the celebration wound down and people began drifting home, Quinlan and Nara walked hand in hand to their cabin. It had been expanded over the years, added onto and improved, now a comfortable home for their extended family when everyone gathered. Inside, they found Mira waiting for them with news. "I am pregnant," she said, her face glowing. "You are going to be grandparents again." Nara embraced her daughter, tears of joy streaming down her face. Quinlan joined the embrace, his heart full to bursting. Another generation, another chance to build on what they had started, another opportunity to prove that love could bridge any divide. Later, alone in their room, Quinlan and Nara lay in bed, holding each other as they had done countless times over the years. "We did it," Nara whispered. We built the life we wanted. We raised our children to be strong and kind. We helped create a community where love matters more than race. We did it. We are still doing it, Quinlan corrected gently. It is not finished, Nara. Every day we choose each other. Every day we show our children and grandchildren how to love across difference. Every day we work to make this community stronger. That is the work. It never ends, but it also never stops being worth it. Nara was quiet for a moment, then said, I am glad you broke those chains, Quinlan Winters. I am glad you stayed, Nara Winters. They fell asleep that way, wrapped in each other and the certainty of their love, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. Outside, the Freewind settlement rested under a blanket of stars, a beacon of hope in a world that still struggled with old hatreds but was slowly, steadily learning that there was another way. And in that cabin, in that bed, in that moment, Quinlan and Nara were proof that love could triumph, that choice mattered, that breaking chains, whether literal or metaphorical, was always the right decision. Their story had started with iron shackles and ended with a legacy of love. And in between was every beautiful, difficult, worthwhile moment of a life built together. The morning sun rose over the valley, painting everything in shades of gold, and in the Winters cabin, two hearts beat in perfect rhythm, just as they had for over 2 decades, just as they would for however many years remained to them. Together, always together, from that first day to this one and beyond.